I'm Joe Cardona, and I am Coach to Win.
Go get me some knowledge.
Army-Navy game is Saturday, December 14th at Northwest Stadium, the home of the Commanders. This will be the 125th time Army is taking on Navy, or Navy's taking on Army. And I'm really excited, Joe, that you were able to join us today during your bye week playing for the Patriots. They call this the greatest rivalry in sports, Joe. Can you tell me why?
Yeah, no, it's a special game, Christian. There's a lot of superlatives about it. You know, where they say this is the only game where everybody playing in it is willing to die for everybody watching it, which is pretty powerful when you think about a statement like that. But I think about it from the perspective of when I was at the Naval Academy, I had no intention of ever playing in the NFL. Obviously, it was like a far-flung dream. But the majority of us were at the academies because the NFL wasn't in the cards. Like, we knew it. Like, we knew it when we showed up. And then now with the influx of NIL and transfer portals and all that, it's like these kids, that's not available to them either. This is just guys out there who want to play hard, who want to put out the best football possible, and really just want to show the other guys on the other sideline that they're as tough as they say they are. And it's an inspiring thing to be a part of. And I think when you think about that perspective, when you think about everything that college football is and who's going to make the playoff and who's going to do this and who's making $10 million in NIL, they're like, no, all we want to do is go beat up the other guy across from me. That's it.
So why the Naval Academy? What was it about the Naval Academy that was intriguing to you?
Yeah, I come from a Navy family. My dad served 24 years between active duty and the reserves in a Navy town in San Diego. So I knew what the Navy could do for my life. Like I got to grow up in a suburb of San Diego. I enjoyed everything about that. I enjoyed watching the planes go over, seeing aircraft carriers, and I had that experience of being around the military from a young age. So for me to have an understanding of what the Navy is, and then also to have the perspective of my dad, who was like served on the enlisted side, and he knew what it was to go to the Naval Academy, to go to an institution like that, what it means for the rest of your life, not just your college years, not just, hey, go play football there. This was a totally different viewpoint on where my life would go if I went to the Naval Academy. So when they recruited me, it was like a no-brainer. Like, I had to do it when I got the opportunity to apply, to get in, and then to go to the prep school, and then eventually the academy.
So explain to everybody how it works. I don't think a lot of people understand. You get recruited. There is no NIL money. You're basically on a scholarship, but everybody is when they go there, because once you are done, you are committing 4 years of your life to, whether it be the Army or the Navy, either one. Do they give you a grace period where, okay, the first year, tell me if you like it. You have the option to keep going for your next 3 years, or to say, nah, not for me. Could you break that down for us?
Sure. So you're pretty much right in the mechanisms. Yeah, the timelines, it's 2 years up front. Your freshman, sophomore year, you can still, hey, I have cold feet about doing this, and you have an out. But the day you show up your junior year, you're committed to the 5 years post-graduation. You're committed to service, or you're on the hook for this education that you've been afforded for 2+ years at that point.
I mean, on the hook. So if you decide to bail, do you have to pay the money back?
Yeah. So if you decide to bail, or you get kicked out for misconduct or whatever it is, or if you flunk out, which, hey, that happens, you are on the hook. You got to pay back the taxpayer.
If they flunk out, you're paying me back.
Exactly.
I didn't know that. I didn't know that was the case. They always leave that out. Whenever I've spoken to a cadet or a midshipman, I never hear that part of it.
You don't want to talk about it while you're there, because you sign that paper and they put a big figure there. It's $180K after 2 years, and you're like,
really?
I can't do that.
That's some pressure.
Yeah, if you flunk out, you're either paying it back, or you're going to the enlisted fleet and you're serving from E1. You're probably chip and paint and earning back that pound of flesh that the military's given you.
That's a lot of pressure because as a plebe, which you were your first season, your first semester there, you're a plebe. Could you break down the time commitment? Because it's insane the amount of things that you are responsible for and the time commitment, especially if you're playing sports.
Sure. Yeah, no. So the moment you show up at school, you enter into plebe summer. That's what they call it. That's the basic training period. I think it's 6 to 8 weeks of just like intensive military training. It's not about football then. Like, even though you're talking about July, your focus isn't, hey, I got to get ready for the season. Your focus is, I'm going to PT in the morning. I'm getting yelled at and I'm getting shaped into a military member. And then that lasts that first 6 weeks. And then once you're thrown into the actual academic year, you're thrown into the football season, you're thrown into whatever it is, that's when the grind of it really begins. Because I look back at the schedule, and one, I'm like, I don't know how I did that. But also I look at it because it's like, all right, you're up at 6:30, whatever it is, you're going to breakfast, you're getting ready for the day. But all these things are mandatory. Like, they're instilling discipline in you. Whereas like everywhere else, it's, hey, if I want to sleep in today, it's fine. If I'm at name your school, I'll take the morning off, whatever. Classes are all mandatory, and it's all throughout the day. You're a full-time student at an academic institution that most of us were probably grossly unprepared for.
I bet.
But when you're sitting there taking calculus and taking these chemistry classes as a freshman, and you're just totally in over your head, and then you got to go to football practice after that, and then you're like, I'm out here 18, 19 years old trying to get ready to play Notre Dame, and I got to worry about the chemistry test that I'm about to fail tomorrow. I got to worry about going back into the we call it the hall, but Bancroft Hall. It's really the military environment, and I'm going to have upperclass midshipmen yelling at me because I look too tired. I'm not yelling loud enough. I'm not doing those disciplined things when I finally get back up to my room at 6:30 in the evening and I settle down to start our academic study period. And it's just one thing after another. And I think obviously it's purposeful. It's to train you to have more endurance than anybody else. It's to train you to seek adversity, overcome it. And obviously, like throughout your time there, it lightens up a little bit. But when you talk about the implications of failing out of school, hey, it's a high financial cost. Hey, you're going back to the town you're coming from. Everybody's going to know you didn't make it. It's a lot of pressure on you, but realistically, it's to prepare you for an environment that there's the supreme amount of pressure when you talk about combat warfare, because that's a no-lose mission.
I can't even imagine getting ready for Notre Dame and freaking the hell out because calculus is not my subject. That doesn't work for me. I've always struggled with it. And then I have the game, my coaches, and then I have this burden of this financial responsibility that I really didn't think would really be a thing. And here I am having to deal with it. You've been in the NFL for 10 years. This is your 10th year. Drafted in 2015, 5th round by the Patriots. I'm assuming that NFL life, I will call it camp, NFL camp, was pretty freaking easy for you.
Going to the New England Patriots in 2015, I can't call that easy. Like
comparatively, Joe.
Comparatively. I think I adjusted better than maybe a few of my peers. But that being said, I was entering a team that had just won the Super Bowl. I was a 5th round drafted long snapper, and they made sure to remind me whether it was the first time I was meeting Julian Edelman, and he's long snapper, right? And I was like, yeah. He's like, you're drafted in the 5th round? I was like, and he's like, I was drafted in the 6th. You were drafted higher than me. I was like, all right, man, my bad. I can't control that they picked me. But that being said, it's about the expectations of the institution you're entering. And for me, I was entering into a locker room that the expectation was championships. The expectation was excellence. So inherently, when you're entering that, there's no, oh, this is just the minimum bar I got to reach. The bar was so far above that you weren't really going to reach it. You just had to aspire to and to rise to that level. And I think that's what the Naval Academy prepared me for, as far as entering into that locker room and saying, I'm not good enough now, but I'm going to work so hard that I will be eventually. So I will say it was probably nice not having those calculus classes anymore, though. I can just focus on the game plan.
So I was trying to figure out how many cadets and midshipmen are actually in the NFL, and I couldn't find a lot. And you weren't even listed, Joe, because you're a reserve lieutenant now. You're not even active duty anymore, correct?
Yeah, I'm an active reservist, so it's different as far as just what our pay and our requirements are yearly. So for me, I still wear the uniform. I still show up to work, more so in the off season, but I have minimum day requirements. I'm a part of a unit, actually rocking the shirt right here. It's for me, like, getting to continue service is important. I know there's different deals now where, hey, you get a chance to play up front, and then after that, you get a chance, you'll be entering the military after your professional sports career ends, which for a lot of people, hey, it's a 3-year career, and then you got to go and start something new.
Yeah.
So for my case, I've been extremely fortunate to have such a long career, and I look at it as a responsibility on my end to pay that back any way I can. So for me, it's continuing service, being like maintaining my reserve status, like being just a regular reservist. Like a lot of guys have had high pressure jobs. I'm no different from my perspective.
Oh, let's talk about this game. I never watched this game as a kid. It wasn't on. It wasn't a thing. In college, I was aware of it, but still wasn't really digesting it until I was able to actually go to the game, which I used to hear people talk about, Army Navy is on my bucket list. I was like, why? And then I went to it, and I work for CBS Sports Network that does an excellent job covering the March On, which is when the cadets and the midshipmen, each service academy takes their turn marching in. They all stand in the freezing cold, Joe, for which seems like forever. And then the midshipmen leave, and then here come the cadets. That whole day, break that whole day down for me. You're getting ready for the March On. You got to march into the stadium, and then you guys go into the stands, and then all hell breaks loose. I've never seen more buttoned up, disciplined guys just completely lose it as I do when I go to the Army Navy game and I look at the stands.
Sure. I remember going as a preps when I was at the Naval Academy prep school. So I was fortunate enough to get to go to, that was in Philly, I think. I don't remember all the details, but that was my one time like going as a student just to watch the game. And it was just that. It was chaos in the stands because you had these two groups of just highly trained, highly disciplined, highly structured individuals, and then you unleash them, you put them in this stadium together, and they're just taught to hate each other from the start. And then they realize they're probably just the same people. It's just, I'm wearing gray, you're wearing blue, like we got to go at it. So you see just that it's a great opportunity to see like the normal side of the cadets and midshipmen, them just being themselves, being kids, being college kids. But at the end of the day, they understand when those things that look normal to them, they got Chinooks flying over, they got F-18s doing a flyover, they got Navy SEALs parachuting into the stands. That's all pretty normal for them to see. They're like, oh yeah, like of course, like they're just doing a typical training jump, or they're doing a typical Passover, like whatever it is. But they're like, then they start to realize they're like, oh wait, we're part of something bigger. This is a big deal. And then from the player's perspective, when you're not doing the March On, you're just, hey, I got to lock in for the biggest football game that I'll ever play in. I remember before my freshman year for Army Navy, I remember being more nervous. I was more nervous for that game than I was for any NFL game, to include the Super Bowl. It was just that level of, there's so many people watching. Because I remember being a kid and my dad turning it on, because my dad was in the Navy and we're going to support the Navy. But here he was enlisted man. Like he knew of academy grads, he knew of officers that were academy folks, but it wasn't him. Like he didn't go to the academy, and he was in a far different situation from that. But the pride he took in watching the young men out there that were saying, I want the opportunity to lead sailors and Marines or soldiers for Army. I want that opportunity. So I got to go show them that I'm worth that. And I think that to me was what I always carried, was like, I got this whole fighting force. They're showing images of these soldiers deployed in Iraq, Marines deployed in Afghanistan, and I'm supposed to lead them one day. Like, I better go prove myself on this field because they're watching me.
Man, it is such an unbelievable just event. It is my favorite event of all time. And 2 Super Bowls here, national championship at Colorado. Nothing like it. Nothing like it. Bragging rights. You're 4-0 against Army. How important are those bragging rights for you?
Every time I get a run into West Point grads, I get to have that quiet confidence about it. Sure, I'm the NFL guy. Sure, I've played 10 years and won a couple Super Bowls, but at the end of the day, now the Army's won a few games, and they get to talk about, hey, they won last year here at Gillette, so I had to deal with that. I watched the game, but at the end of the day, I went 4-0. I still got my Letterman jacket, my letter sweater with my 4 stars on it for beating Army 4 times. They can't take that away from me. Like, I walked out of that stadium still with my head held high in a sea of West Point guys that were all celebrating, but I had those 4 stars on.
Yeah.
It didn't matter. I wasn't wearing 2 Super Bowl rings. I wasn't wearing anything else. I just had those 4 stars, and there's like.
So is that the way it works? They give you like a little bar, like a little Letterman star, or a bar that you would get in high school, and you get one of those for every win?
So for us, we have this old school like cardigan letter sweater. It's like it's got it's blue with a big yellow end, and then for every year you beat Army in your respective sport, you get a star to add to it. Now, some of them look sad because, hey, they never beat Army. So
I don't know how much I'd be wearing mine if I went if I was a midshipman or a cadet. I don't know. I would just burn the sweater. I'm like, there's no substance to it anymore.
Yeah, I know. And because that's what that place is. When you show up, everything is beat Army, go Navy, beat Army. Like,
yep.
To the point of, when you're a plebe, you have to run through the halls. Like, they call it chopping. You're like running at like a jog pace, and every corner you have to turn like sharply, like you're out there making a cut, like on a route, and you make this turn and you have to yell, "Go Navy, sir, beat Army, sir." Like, you have to yell it everywhere you go. So it's ingrained in you from the very start to beat Army. So if you think about the kids that are walking around without 4 stars on their letter sweater, you look at them, you're like, come on, guys. Like, you got to get it together.
Both teams this year, Joe, are pretty good. Army's pretty good. Navy's no slouch this year either. Have you been paying attention to what the teams are doing this year? Do you understand how everything has changed there? Because it seems like recruiting's changed. The way they trained before the season has changed for both cadets and midshipmen. It seems like they're allowing these teams to be more like a real college football team, other than when you're a plebe and you have that 6 weeks of basic training.
Sure. There's always going to be the requirements that we have to hit just to say we're military members first. There's going to be those things that we have to do. We're going to have to still go camp out and work those fundamentals in the field and do those things that make us military members. But at the end of the day, they're asking us to go out there, play in a conference, play on ESPN and all these major networks, and they're asking us to go out and compete and win. And to me, when you really talk about what the goals of the military academies are, absolutely it's to produce officers first, but also when you want to see an officer and what they're made of, you test them against the best competition possible. We should relish in the opportunity to watch Army and Navy play against Notre Dame, who's going to have a home playoff spot this year. That is an opportunity for our guys to show that they're worthy of being on the field with the best, because we wouldn't want a fighting force that isn't prepared to do that. For me, it is a good thing to see those programs entering into this new era of college football. But it's also important that they never fully enter into it either, because when you talk about the name, image, and likeness, when you talk about transferring, when you talk about all this stuff, that has no place at our military academies. And it's even better and it's even sweeter that we're having success in this era, because it shows that football is still a sport that's meant to be difficult. Football is still a sport that it's meant to produce good teammates. It's still a sport that should instill selflessness. And that's what these service academies are proving this year by having success. It was fun watching Navy play this year. It's been fun watching Army have success. And I know our nation will be more secure because they're having success.
Wow. I just got one thing to say to you, Joe. Go Navy.
Beat Army. There we go.
Go get me some knowledge.